Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This week, we will talk about the Canada's inflation rate, who fell at 1.8%. Stick with us until the end. You don't want to miss this. Chris, Canada's annual inflation rate decreased to 1.8% in December, which was down from 1.9% in November. The GST break led to notable price reduction in specific categories. For instance, prices for food purchased from restaurants experienced their first annual decline, and also the energy and housing.
Yeah.
So I have two questions for you. What precisely do you think influenced the most the rate drop, and how will the rate drop, so the inflation rate, will influence now the buyer's habits?
Yeah, well, and that's a great question. So, I think for the December numbers versus November, that GST break that we all got to really enjoy definitely made some impacts. I think the Bank of Canada did the right thing there. I think the biggest problem that they did, though, is sorry, I shouldn't say the Bank of Canada did, that the government did, is this policy is temporary.
Yep.
It's like this is, if you want to make a little bit of smoke and mirrors and you want to put the illusion of stuff happening, that's a good way to do it. I think it's going to be detrimental to the economy as a whole, because really the people that are bearing the cost of that are the small businesses that we're trying to figure out what the heck they're supposed to do with this, and then it all goes back to normal again. So I think that was probably one of the biggest impacts for that month. But longer term, I do still think we're heading in the right direction there, and the inflation rates are going lower. And I think that's largely being driven by transportation, energy, and housing, and housing specifically. Rental costs. Rentals have dropped across the board. Largely probably due to the immigration policies and stuff as well here. Number of contributing factors, but those big three that all contribute, they've all kind of come down to a little bit more manageable levels. Question is now, can we keep it up?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Exactly. And you brought in a very good point. We go to a restaurant. We really like a restaurant here in Edmonton. And when you go to order now, they will give you the receipt with the GST in Alberta, like 5%.
Mm-hmm.
But they will charge you when you tap, no GST.
Yeah.
So I realized that because that's administration. So it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's legal, but just to show how this was weird. Only for 2 months you have to change all your systems. So most of the restaurants, for example, will not change their systems. We'll just go by with it for 2 months.
The cost and the intricacy.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
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 And so we talked about the rents that are going down. We talked about that many times, and also the CPI, the inflation on a monthly basis, fell 0.4% in December.
Mm-hmm.
That was also a good news, a positive news. But one thing, the currency impact. So the Canadian dollar weakened against the US dollars after the inflation report. It traded at 1.4435. So usually when the inflation, the CPI report comes out positive, because it's lowering, so it's positive, the currency goes up. Okay, because there's less inflation, so the currency, the currency's values is more. That's the basic principle. Now it was the contrary, and the point that I want to make is that I believe this is probably about the threats of the tariffs
Yeah.
that debalance. That's the word. Debalance everything right now for a few days, few weeks, few months. I don't know. And I want to hear you on this. What do you believe it will be the next step for the Bank of Canada,
Yeah.
especially with all the problems from the US?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be interesting times for everybody over the next little bit here, but these threats of the tariffs are going to be coming in, according to Trump, the Feb 1 deadline, within the next week. The Bank of Canada, I think, is still going to be lowering rates. Like, I do still think they're going to continue to do that, but at much more of a moderate pace than they had been. The last half of last year was pretty was good in many respects. But I mean, as that interest rate lowers as well, the Canadian market isn't quite as attractive to foreign investors that are seeking higher returns. So, you've got this balancing act kind of across the board, tariff threats, and then just kind of a global economic slowdown. So I think just the uncertainty that lies in right now will continue to play a toll on the Canadian dollar. And until those tariffs are at least figured out, we're gonna continue to see some. I wouldn't be investing a whole bunch if I was a big corporation right now.
Yeah, exactly, because Trump wants to deregulate a lot of industries and help with investments. There's a lot of people who pledged. I think he has like close to 1 trillion. Sorry, not a bit. 1 trillion of committed investments. 500 from the Stargate project with OpenAI. You probably heard about it because the last day was,
that one's interesting.
With Sam Altman and all that, and SoftBank. And SoftBank also pledged 200 billions in another project. That's only 700 billions, like really, really fast. So I believe in the first 5 days in office, he pledged like 1 trillion, which is, imagine, man, 1 trillion, that's US dollars. That's not monopoly money.
Yeah.
And so this you understand that he will create a investment climate there and a production bonanza that will take by storm the whole continent. And what I believe also, there's a point I want to make. He said, if you watched the executive orders, one of the orders. So at the beginning, he said, on day one, I'm going to put tariffs on Canada and Mexico, 25%. Then he said, February 1st. We're looking at February 1st. Remember when Peter Ducey asked him?
Yeah.
But in the executive orders, one of them was instructing. I don't know which agency. I don't remember which agency, but they were instructing the agencies to an investigation about what they have to do as tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Okay, that was one of the executive order, and that the report has to be ready before April 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting on day one, now it's February 1st, but one of his executive orders is like, I want to get the report to know what to apply on April 1st. So what date is the good one?
Ready, shoot, aim. Yeah. When you think about it, though, as much as he's been under a little bit of fire, I think, for that whole, say we're going to do things day one, and say he's going to do a lot of things day one, and then putting it off a whole several weeks, and then a couple months. Like, I mean, these are pretty massive, radical moves to be doing in anything that you consider months. So, I mean, even the investigation taking until April, that's a pretty short period of time. We'll see where it all happens. But the ready, shoot, aim thing does definitely seem to be a little bit of a policy with this.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, there's not a lot, that we're going to be doing to do anything to directly affect it, and hopefully we can influence some of it so that it works a little bit either more to our advantage or less to our disadvantage, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. See, this is the article that that I found on CBC. So the food, drinks bought from restaurants contributed most to the decline. Okay. So here we have a rate drop, right? The inflation rate. That it's on items that are, let's say, artificially controlled, or because this is a government intervention because of the GST, right? And housing prices still rose in December by 4.5%, but at a slower pace than the previous month. Okay. Gas prices rose 3.5%. Okay. And this is the annual inflation rate in Canada, which is 1.8 right now. Okay. So I also believe Bank of Canada will not drop the rate by 0.5 basis points. I also believe if they do it, they will do it 0.25. And I just want you to tell me how do you believe this will impact the buyers?
Sorry, if the lower inflation rate will impact the buyers, or
the lower inflation rate, yes. Mm-hmm. We know the GST basically influenced the inflation rate drop. So I would like to know how that the inflation rate drop will influence the buyers coming in now at the spring to buy a home or a condo.
Well, and Dragos, I don't know about you, and I know this doesn't have the direct influence on the inflation rate as it is measured here, because there's a number of different ways that they do measure inflation. But
and also, I don't want to. I just want to. Also, the inflation is not calculated the way it used to be, because if it would, we are at 30% inflation in the past 2 years.
Okay? Sorry, can you explain that one for a sec?
Yeah. So the way inflation is calculated, I don't have immediately here an example. I can do it in the next podcast, but everyone can find it. If you calculate it the way it used to be calculated in the 80s and 90s, the inflation rate would be close to 30% in the past 2 years, not monthly, not year over year, over 2 years. You understand? So that's another thing. Mm-hmm. We say the inflation, it's 1.8%, but that's also influenced by the way it's calculated. It's higher than that if we calculate the way inflation rate should be calculated. That's my point.
Right. And sorry, so are you speaking like a basket of goods to the exact same basket of goods down the road?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of contributes right into what we're just discussing there then as well, is people's habits have changed over the last bit.
You are following exactly my point, and you are very smart, man. Exactly that. What?
I keep telling my wife that.
Yeah. This is the example. Compare apples to apples. Oranges to oranges,
Yeah. Well, and how long is that going to last, though? Like, I look at the way that we used to do things. We used to have a tenderloin steak once a week. Yeah. And we'd have chicken 3 times a week, and we'd have pork kind of once every 2 or 3 weeks, and then how many nice meals out, and then combined with pub meal. We haven't done that. We've not been doing that. We look at the steaks adoringly at Costco now, and then we move past. We buy a couple chickens and we move to pork. You know what I mean? Like, our habits have changed pretty radically due to this.
Yeah.
It gets gotten ridiculous.
Exactly. That's my point.
But,
that's exactly my point.
Yeah, but at some point, like we are in so many different avenues, we do kind of start to trend back to the way we used to do things again as well. So I do think that's going to actually start changing that basket over to a little bit closer to what it was. Maybe not quite as far. And, it's not the same for everybody either. Like, people are in different situations all over the place. And I think the people that are going to get the hardest hit with these potential tariffs coming up are the people that their baskets look a little bit different. And they may have to go without on a bunch of stuff. But so I think it'll be a little diverse in the way things are going to change with people's buying habits. But I think they will continue to change over the next little bit, and then they will start to revert back to what they were before.
Yeah. Me too. I also believe that the buyers will not be impacted at all for this very small change. And I'm very curious. Me too. I believe 2025 will be a great year to be alive. A lot of things will happen, man. A lot of things will change. And we are just at the beginning in January. I can't wait to be in December. See, like the expression, what a difference a year makes, it will apply in December.
It's going to be an interesting year, this one, for sure.
Yeah.
The number of years over the past few that we've had that have been never thought I'd see, we've seen. And I think we're going to continue to see them for the next year, maybe 4.
Yeah, exactly. 2020. In 2020, everything changed.
Yeah.
Everything changed, in my opinion. It's just so many things changed that you can say everything changed.
It's ironic. 2020 vision was, that year, and then we all got blindsided by a lot of things. So
yeah, exactly. Chris, do you have anything else to add?
Just that I think we've got to, kind of keep a close eye on food, energy, and transport, which are major topics here in Alberta particularly, but I think throughout all of Canada and the States right now. And housing. And housing is going to be a little bit all over the place here in the next bit too, because the costs of housing construction, I think, are going to be going up pretty drastically. We've got less construction going on in many facets. And we've got a lot of projects that are stopping even in the larger centers here. So it'll be interesting across those 3 categories just to monitor what goes on in the next few months and the next year.
That's great, Chris. I'm really happy we did this today, and we'll continue to do it every week. So I would like to thank everyone for your support and your listening. And we will see each other next week. Ciao, everyone.
See you guys.